And now to the U.S.'s role, as the U.S. military has been supporting Israel in fighting retaliation from Iran this weekend. Joining me now is Texas Senator Ted Cruz, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thank you so much for being here. Your reaction on the U.S.'s side?
Well, Maria, this week has been extraordinarily consequential, extraordinarily dangerous, and I will say this week was also inevitable. The ayatollah is a theocratic lunatic. He regularly chants death to America, death to Israel. He is building nuclear weapons because he wants to be able to use nuclear weapons. Now, President Trump drew a very clear red line in the sand. He said on April 12th, he told Iran, you have 60 days to negotiate. I led a coalition of 52 Republican senators, and we all said we stand with President Trump. President Trump has been clear that the standard for any deal must be complete dismantlement, no centrifuges, no enrichments. There is no reason a theocratic lunatic who chants death to America should have nuclear weapons, the tools to murder millions of Americans or millions of Israelis.
Right.
On the 61st day, the Ayatollah publicly said he would not shut down a single centrifuge. He said he would build more centrifuges. He would make more enriched uranium in order to make more nuclear weapons. That was effectively, Maria, a giant middle finger at President Trump. But it was also a message to Israel, we're not going to stop. And if you don't act, you're going to find out when we've achieved success with a mushroom cloud in the skies of Tel Aviv or New York or Los Angeles. And so Israel acted. They acted with extraordinary efficacy. We've seen 720 military strikes across Israel. They have decapitated the top leadership of Iran's military. They've taken out the head of the IRGC. They've taken out the chief of staff of the armed forces. They've taken out multiple nuclear scientists. They've leveled Natanz, which is the chief research area where they're doing much of the enrichment. And Israel is committed to getting the job done. And understand what the job is. The job is to prevent Iran from being able to acquire nuclear weapons. It's not conquering Iran. It's not turning them into a democracy. It's taking away their capacity to commit mass murder. And this week, they've made enormous progress in getting that accomplished.
And that goal has far and wide implications for the world. How would you assess those implications?
Yes. Well, I would assess them that they're enormously beneficial to us, to America. You know, there's a lot of discussion of America first foreign policy, and I emphatically agree with America first foreign policy. This week is a good week for America. Why? Because a very dangerous enemy who has been murdering hundreds of Americans. The Ayatollah has murdered over 600 servicemen and women. He's the chief funder of terrorism across the globe, and he's trying to get weapons to be able to murder not hundreds of Americans, but millions of Americans. And Israel, a little bitty country surrounded by enemies in the Middle East, Israel is doing an enormous favor to America right now. They're taking out the capability of Iran to strike out at America. And I'll say two things. Number one, Iran would not be in this position if Joe Biden and the Democrats had not spent 4 years flooding over $100 billion into Iran. In a very real sense, Joe Biden and the Democrats funded Iran's terrorism efforts and funded their nuclear efforts. And number two, I stand unequivocally with President Trump. President Trump has said Iran will not get a nuclear weapon, and we will do whatever is necessary. And that means we stand unequivocally with the state of Israel. That is where America is. It is where I am. And it's the right place to be for the interest of the United States of America.
So what does that mean for the United States? Does this entangle us in a wider war?
So I don't believe it does. I don't believe there's any scenario where we would see American boots on the ground. I think we are already seeing American logistical help defending Israel in terms of intercepting missiles. Iran is firing wantonly at civilian areas. The Israeli military strikes are very targeted to military locations, nuclear research locations that are trying to build nuclear weapons. Iran is just lobbing missiles into population centers, trying to kill as many Jews as they can. And Israel's done a very effective job defending that. The United States has been assisting in defending those civilian populations. And the United States also assists with logistical assistance and assists historically in helping provide weaponry.
Yeah.
I think all of that is important, but Israel's military is incredibly effective. They're going to be the ones providing the boots on the ground, and I think that's exactly what they're doing right now.
Senator, do you want to see regime change? Do you think that happens soon? And what would the future look like in that regard?
Look, I think it is very much in the interest of America to see regime change. I don't think there's any redeeming the ayatollah. He is filled with hatred. You know, I'll tell you a story that's a little bit amazing. The former head of the Iranian nuclear program, a man whom many say was sent to meet his maker by the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence forces. He had written in his last will and testament that he wanted the following words written on his tombstone. Here lies a man who sought to annihilate Israel. Maria, think of the level of bilious hate.
Yeah.
When that's the only thing you want to be remembered for is I am such a bigot, such an anti-Semite, filled with so much hate that the entire purpose of my life is to murder as many Jews as possible. That's what we're dealing with, religious fanatics. So it is unquestionably in America's interest to see a secular regime. You know, before the revolution, Iran was a secular country that was an ally of America. I think the people want to go back to that.
And we want to assess how significant the nuclear capability is in Iran right now. Senator, it's good to have you this morning. We so appreciate your leadership here. Senator Ted Cruz joining us. Thank you, sir.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.